Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, guys, there's a big political fight down in Florida, pitting conservatives spearheaded by Governor Ron DeSantis against liberals and the Walt Disney Corporation. Honestly, it is the sort of brain-rotting culture war mess that we typically stay away from here. But it is worth digging into, because I actually think it kind of says everything about the sorry, principle-free, reactionary, pointless nature of a lot of our politics. It's a fake fight with fake stakes, simultaneously about everything and nothing at all. And it has scrambled brains across the political spectrum. This fight has got free market bro Ben Shapiro simping for big government.
I am the most free market person on the right. I'm an extraordinarily pro-free market person. I don't believe that generally the government should crack down on the operations of businesses. I think more freedom for businesses are good. I think that lower taxes for business are good for the economy of Florida, for the economy of the United States more broadly. However, corporations have to stand up for their own free market bona fides. And they have to not become tools of the people who wish to destroy freedom in this country on behalf of leftist groupthink. If you decide to just become a woke corporation that does the bidding of your Democratic taskmasters, don't be surprised when you get clocked with a legislative 2x4. F around and find out.
So basically, yay corporate power, unless corporations happen to do something I don't personally like, in which case, yay government power. Sounds like a really solid and principled ideology you got there. It's also got liberals who have railed against the notion that corporations should be given civil rights, suddenly sounding like Mitt Romney declaring that corporations are people too, my friend. Here's The Intercept exploring whether Disney's First Amendment rights to free speech have been violated. Here's TNR gloating about how progressive tolerance is now a profitable posture embraced by companies as a market strategy. They're right in that assessment, by the way. But they never quite get around in the piece to saying that even when the free market happens to line up with liberal ideology, corporate personhood and control over government, still really bad. Okay, so let me give you the outlines of what is happening here. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis obviously wants to run for president, and his strategy to endear himself with the conservative base is to pass a whole bunch of culture war legislation intended first and foremost to own the libs. In response to Black Lives Matter protests, he passed laws restricting the right to protest, which got rather awkward when protests against the Cuban government broke out, violating the new laws that DeSantis had just passed. After restricting speech with those anti-protest laws, he then supposedly took a stand for free speech by passing tech legislation, the impact of which likely negligible, but send all the right signals that he is against censorship, at least when it's applied to ideas that he happens to support. Proving how limited his commitment to free speech is ultimately, though, he then passed an extremely broad law in line with the latest conservative moral panic over critical race theory. That law has led to dozens of math textbooks being banned for controversial ideas like encouraging kids to disagree respectfully. Apparently, not wanting kids to be jerks is now part of woke ideology. But the latest culture war brushfire is over a law that has been dubbed the Don't Say Gay law by its critics. The portion of the law which has gotten the most attention bans teaching of sexuality and gender in grades K-3. For older grades, such learning must be, quote, age appropriate. Of course, sex ed is already banned through 5th grade in Florida, so this seems basically to be nothing more than meaningless culture war posturing once again. On the other hand, the law does open up avenues for parents to sue school districts if they feel that the law is being violated. Because the language of the law is extremely vague, this has sparked fears that activist parents backed by conservative legal infrastructure could target school districts for infractions as trivial as potentially a child mentioning their same-sex parents in a classroom discussion, or perhaps a teacher having a picture of their same-sex partner on their desk. Now, I honestly don't know if that's realistic fear or not, but nobody else does either. But what is absolutely clear here is that the main intent of the law is to serve as an anti-gay virtue signal bill, framed as a parental control bill, passed for one reason alone, and that's to further Ron DeSantis' political ambitions. DeSantis can signal that he's tough on gay and trans people to his base, while painting it in inoffensive terms of parental control to the majority. It's vagueness allowing him to portray it however he wants, depending on the audience. Now, the language is so mushy as to both be meaningless and all-encompassing. And as such, it is absolutely fair for gay and trans people to feel attacked by the law, because it seems increasingly clear that the GOP hasn't so much embraced gay people as full human beings as beat a temporary culture war retreat, given that support for gay marriage and basic rights for gay people has gained overwhelming mainstream acceptance. So instead of being upfront about their desire to roll back gains like Obergefell, they're reaching for coded language about sexual deviance and about grooming, attempting to return to a prior generation's framing of non-hetero people as perverts and pedophiles. The Libs of TikTok account, they were into this. This is kind of their stock and trade, showing some random teacher talking about their pronouns and then accuse them of grooming children. It's a clever sleight of hand, frankly. You're not opposing gay rights or trans rights per se. Instead, you're opposing things everyone hates, things like pedophilia and targeting of vulnerable children. Of course, if Republican Party elites really hated such things, then they probably wouldn't have been cool with Roy Moore as their nominee in Alabama. With conservatives firmly in control of the Supreme Court and positioned to hold a trifecta of federal government control come 2024, it is absolutely reasonable to see this as a trial balloon for further attacks on previously established rights. All right, so that's the law. In response to that law, Disney, Florida's most iconic business, denounced the law and crucially paused all political contributions to Florida politicians who are typically showered with Mickey Mouse cash. Now, that move came after Disney's own employees protested and staged a walkout over Disney's initial lack of response to the bill. Let me pause for a moment and just remind everybody, especially my friends on the left, that Disney is actually bad. If you are on the left, Walt Disney Corporation is not and will never be an ally in any fight. Their products have been made in inhumane sweatshops. Take a look at this. Their American workers have been routinely used and abused. A 2018 report found that 11% were paid so poorly they were actually homeless. 2/3 were food insecure, and a majority worried about facing eviction. Disney is taking this stance in this fight because they think it's going to help their bottom line, aligning them with the values of the affluent PMC. It's that simple. It's a vague gesture towards progressive principles intended to bolster market position with the tolerant majority. In response, DeSantis and the Republicans decided they were going to do something to show how tough they were about standing up to Disney's fake progressivism. So they passed a bill revoking Disney's special tax district, something called Reedy Creek. Now, this sounds like it's bad and like it's going to really hurt Disney, but the reality is actually quite different. A local reporter dug deeply into the likely consequences, and basically, the primary benefit Disney gains from the Reedy Creek district is the ability to govern themselves. This makes it easier for them to launch new infrastructure projects and build new hotels and the like, but actually comes with a higher tax bill for Disney. They tax themselves to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars and use it to then pay for essential services, things like police and fire and sewer. Essentially, Disney has accepted higher taxes for the ability to flexibly self-govern. Without the special tax district, that tax burden that was previously shouldered by Disney is now instead going to be passed to local county residents, not to mention responsibility for the debts that Reedy Creek has accrued. So, the likely overall impact of ending the Reedy Creek special tax district is to cut Disney's taxes and to raise taxes on ordinary Floridians. In other words, the GOP's attack on Disney is fake. It won't really hurt Disney, but it feels like it'll hurt Disney. And in the culture war, the show, that's all that ultimately matters. So let me just try to sum up here this brain-melting series of events. You got a fake ally in Disney, making a fake stand over a likely meaningless law with fake consequences devised by a culture warrior who is really just using this whole fake fight to fuel his own political ambitions. Meanwhile, the plutocrat class can just look on and laugh as the heated battlegrounds of politics are increasingly focused on these theatrical displays of divisive cultural signaling instead of a material politics that could actually rebalance the scales and provide basic dignity to American families. In the macro, nothing is better for Disney and Apple and Google and all the rest than the public being consumed by these culture war brushfires while the status quo poverty and despair and plutocracy continues unabated. If the GOP or anyone else is really interested in humbling the Disney executives, they use the power of the government to make it easier for Disney's long mistreated employees to unionize and have a say in the day-to-day running of their workplace. That's why, without a doubt, the most important political fight in the country is the one that's being fought that we just talked about by workers at Starbucks and Amazon and elsewhere. It's the correct battle with the correct divide. And it's not going to confuse people into thinking that Ben Shapiro is against corporate power or Disney is a progressive ally or that we should fight to defend the sanctity of corporate civil rights. Everything about this drove me a little bit mad. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.